excused himself, but we are here with my distinguished panel to talk about crypto investing in 2022. Obviously something that's probably of interest for most of us. So why don't we start with just introducing panel. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Hi, I'm Mitchell Dawn, and I run 3 crypto funds, who are short-term trading funds, which we discussed yesterday, and a venture fund. I've been running our funds for 7 years and have about 100 million of assets under management.
Thank you.
So on the investing side, I bought Bitcoin in 2011. It was pretty early on to Ethereum, and have been buying NFTs, or rather aping NFTs, since 2017. Probably one of the more significant collections in the world. I started Adera Hashgraph, was the founder and CEO of the Reserve Protocol, and now have started a company called Liat.
Well, what's the coolest NFT that you own?
You know, last night, before last night, I would have said, I own the 7th rarest board ape or a Nakamoto Pepe or something, but last night we just broke, it's the second most, myself and a partner, Cosimo Massini, bought, I don't know if you guys know right-click save, by Xcopy. So we managed to buy that last night, which is a pretty big coup. I consider it to be the Mona Lisa of NFTs.
What did you pay for it?
A lot. So,
Absolutely something. It's public knowledge, it's 1,600 years.
and I'm Liat Aaronson, I'm the COO of Horizen Labs, and have been a venture capital investor and crypto investor as well. So we've got a kind of a wide array here. I'd love to hear some thoughts about what 2022 is going to look like, and what is your investment thesis for 2022?
Well, you know, if you asked me that question in 2017, I would never have predicted that we would have a crypto winner for 3 years following. If you asked me the same question when Bitcoin hit 1,000 in 2013, I wouldn't have predicted that there would be a crypto winner for 3 years. So, you know, I'm cautiously optimistic. I want it to go up. But, you know, it's an extremely cyclical industry. Unfortunately, what goes up goes down, and you know, there are bull cycles and there are bear cycles, and I would, if anybody said that they knew what was going to happen, I would laugh and hope that maybe they're hoping for the best, but they're planning for the worst. So I think it's 50-50 as to whether it's going to go up or down.
And do you think this volatility that has been pretty much, you know, this past quarter, is that something that's going to stay?
Yeah, I think it's an extremely volatile market. That's why it's fun, right? For us investors and traders. The more it goes up and the more it goes down, the more fun we have. I mean, we try to protect ourselves from bear markets, but you know, you have to, as I said, hope for the best but plan for the worst.
And so you invest a lot in NFTs, and you've got a big NFT collection. How do you think that the market is going to be affected there?
It's funny because when I first purchased NFTs in 2017, I sort of had a thesis about digital scarcity being, able to be valued by a wide number of people. And the thing that I find interesting is that, firstly, people have adopted digital scarcity. So I think that in general, the long term of NFTs looks good, which is why I'm trying to purchase the earlier NFTs and all the NFTs that have some sort of historical significance, etc. Where I think this becomes interesting is, we've just had sort of the crypto degens come into it, but the companies are coming in, and sort of traditional art world is coming in. The company's faster actually than the traditional art world, I feel, but they're doing it cautiously, as they did with Bitcoin, Ethereum, etc. But as that trend starts to accelerate, where you have more and more people coming in. And as the technology starts to mature, not as a technology, but within the minds of people, I feel like the thesis behind, investing in NFTs will become stronger. Specifically, and because we have timestamps as part of NFTs, the earlier NFTs in specific categories, whether it be, it doesn't have to be the earliest NFT ever, it could be the earliest NFT, for example, in Solana, or Solana Monkey Business, or it could be, the first ever DNG NFT, etc. Those are the ones which, have, some sort of story, some sort of franchise, or some sort of like significance in some sort of way, and ongoing community. Those are the sort of pillars, some of the pillars that I look for when I'm sort of investing in NFT. So it really, you got to kind of think about what the thesis is in why you're purchasing an NFT. There's always a risk reward, and the way I frame it in my brain is, what's the franchise, what's the community like, what's the story going to be, or the narrative going to be, or evolve into. Buying Pepe in 2017 was stupid, right? But I was like, well, this whole thing, it's funny. There's like this weird community going around it, and this guy Matt Fury, I think his name, I always pronounce his last name wrong, is going through some crazy shit right now. So this thing is shaping up to be an interesting story. So I decided to take the bet on purchasing a bunch of Pepes. But
can I take an opposing viewpoint? I think you're way overcomplicating it. Because if I look at an NFT, if I think it's pretty, it's cool, it's nice, it's fun to look at, I buy it. I don't care about all that other stuff.
And I would say so I do the same thing. I do it mostly on the Tezos blockchain because it's cheaper, right? It's funny because
I don't care about the technology. I just think, I'm buying art. If it's pretty, I buy it.
Yeah, but okay. So I do the same thing, but I'm not doing that as an investment thesis. I'm doing that as
I do because I like it because it's pretty.
But art works that way. Some people buy art because it's aesthetically pleasing and they want it on their living room, wall. And some people invest in art and have tons of collections hidden in, places that isn't even shared with anyone. So I think it really depends if you're looking at this as an investor investing in it with a thoughtful thesis, or you're doing it because it's fun.
Something that's interesting as well is I've now spoken to probably 2 or 3 funds, each around 50 or 100 million, who are bringing money in to invest in NFTs. When that money hits, we're talking digital scarcity here, right? The marquee initial NFTs, they're just going to have to go up in value because there isn't that many of the initial NFTs, right?
So you're predicting that no matter what kind of happens in the market, the influx of capital coming in, the nature of the digital scarcity of the earlier ones is going to be kind of untouched by what happens in the broader market.
Okay, I don't agree that scarcity matters here, because there are thousands of NFTs, or millions of NFTs. So when people say it's scarce, it's not scarce. It's the same with Bitcoin. There are thousands of coins, right? So I don't think scarcity is important.
But there are only 21 million Bitcoin.
So it's deflationary by
right. And there are only 10,000
4,000 more coins. So yes, Bitcoin is only 21 million, but there are 4,000 more coins.
Okay.
Let's change the subject.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit. We were talking earlier, and as we were prepping for this, and talking about one of your other investment theses, non-NFT, that you look at technology and kind of the delta created by emerging technologies. You have been following blockchain technology for a while. So do you want to share a little bit about thoughts of that in 2022?
So, it started off with distributed ledger technology, proof of work. Then 2017, I was like, well, there's going to be evolutions within this space. I had in my brain, my investment thesis back then was oracles, privacy, interoperability, I can't remember it exactly, but most of them, because these were the functionalities that were coming onto the blockchain. Oh, scalability. Scalability was a big one. That's why I committed my time to developing Hedera Hashgraph. And stability, which is why I started the reserve protocol as well. So now I look at the market, and a couple of things occur to me. The first is that in any market, firstly, it's more difficult because there are lots of smarter people coming into the market, right? This I don't like actually. This is when I feel like I'm kind of it's getting late to a market. But the platform layers have been built, and I feel like the thing that is the opportunity now, it's like TCP/IP and the internet was built. Now you're going to get the Googles and Facebooks, etc. So, and these are actual real-world functionality things like insurance, things like security, things like supply chain, etc. These are things which I feel are going to come onto, and NFTs being another example, right? These are things that I feel are going to utilize this underlying technology to create these mega companies, and where I feel like the technology is going to go.
Good. Can I take an opposing viewpoint?
I love this.
So,
He's a really great guy, by the way. He's doing this because it's entertaining. I take no real offense to this. And trust me, many people have completely shadowed my investment theses, and most have been right, but the one times I am right, and the one times where I would really be.
So you're really right, and I respect your approach, but look, we're here to make money, and technology is important, and it's enabled it, but it's market sentiment that drives the price of whether or not people make money. So, like retail investors, I believe most retail investors use email, but they can't explain the technology of it. They drive cars, but they can't fix a car. They fly an airplane, but they can't explain the aerodynamics. It's just like with Bitcoin. They don't understand the technology. They just want to make money. So I think market sentiment as an investor is as important, if not more important, than technology.
And I think you wouldn't disagree with that.
No, I think that I would love to disagree because I want to argue with you. You man. But no, I don't disagree. I think that you need that at some point technology becomes commoditized. So what I noticed when we built Hedera was we got a jump start for about like 3-4 months, and then all these companies started coming out, Solana, Polkadot, etc. All similar solutions to the same problem. So
in our trading business, we have in the short term a technology edge because we've better software, but eventually we get locked out.
And I think to your point, and kind of to match both of these, I think it's market sentiment that's definitely driving the prices and what's going on in the market. But I think the technology development to get to that commoditized place is what's going to be really interesting in the actual use case of it, which will then drive more market sentiment.
And then, to your point, that's where sentiment, so sentiment is, it's funny because when a blockchain project talks about go-to-market, or it's different to like when a direct-to-consumer company talks about go-to-market. Go-to-market for a blockchain company is controlling market sentiment because you need to, it's like having a floating, the token is both a utility token at some point in time, but also kind of weirdly like where you get your capital from to create the company, the technology. So you have to control sentiment as part of your go-to-market, right? And so, it's so important that you assess not just the technology, but as you're saying.
It's also not just technology market sentiment. It's the management team, it's the investors, it's the competition,
it's the marketing.
So, as a former investor, what were your more important criteria in making your investments?
Well, I think you just hit on it on team. So I think early stage investing was really mostly about team, and I think it's about not only the credentials of the team, but also their ability to ride those waves and go with the market changes. You start something, and especially in this industry, things are moving so fast. You need to have a team that's going to be agile enough to kind of roll with the punches.
When no one will say it, I'll say it. It's team, it's the market that you're going for, and if you're a big enough fish, or if you're a true VC, it's how much of it you can get. And that's what people don't actually say.
So I disagree. I think it's team, and team.
But if you're, okay, let me, you know, if you have a team going for a market that is going to be too small.
Yeah, but the smart team will
They'll figure it out. They'll figure it out.
Okay.
And to your point about the ticket size, actually one of the trends that are going on now, and I think this is, I think it makes sense in this industry, is that it's true that some of the bigger VCs have to take the bigger ticket, but actually you see that rounds have many VCs taking really small tickets. It's almost like a kind of hedging bets strategy. So it's a really interesting dynamic, actually. And I do wonder how they're going to
Okay. Let me differentiate. It's because you know, it's like a spray and pray advisor, right? It's like you can advise 50 companies, spray and pray, and maybe one
statistically, so right.
Statistically right, but you know, I feel like in the way I invest, like, you know, I would try and invest a lot into a specific company, and because I can move the needle because of, you know, my contacts when I've done. If you're a smaller VC without that much significance to move the market, then yes. But if you're talking to a larger one, then, you know, it makes more sense and you know, it doesn't. For them, it's like putting a $200,000 check. If you're multi-point capital, you're like over, I don't know, $3 billion now. You know, you've got to find it's harder to deploy into the market.
Oh yeah, the bigger the fund, the harder to deploy. Certainly, I think we saw that with the Vision Fund as an example. So let's talk about something else that's going to affect market sentiment, which is what's going to happen with SEC and generally kind of regulation sentiment. Big week for this. Any thoughts?
So we look at not just the US regulations, but the global regulations. And every time that China puts on a ban, like in 2013, 17, 21, the market has had a short-term dip. Eventually it's recovered. But we're tracking India right now, which is also banning Bitcoin, and Iran, Kazakhstan recently banned or put a moratorium on more electricity to mine. But in the U.S., I think that the U.S. is, and unfortunately I was hoping Gary Gensler would be more positive, but it seems like the sentiment is more going towards anti-money laundering and increased regulation. Gary Gensler wants congressional authority to regulate exchanges like Coinbase, which I think there'll be gridlock in Congress. I don't think he'll get it. But I don't know. I just don't think he's going to approve a Bitcoin ETF using real Bitcoin anytime soon. So I think that the regulators are not encouraging enough.
Do you have any thoughts on that?
No.
I disagree.
No, yeah, I mean, look, I'm investing in a couple of Indian projects. I think that you know, it's hard. I think regulators can really mess it up if they don't allow. Yes, SBF was in public theater, in question yesterday, and generally the feedback was that, hey, these guys are coming around to it. That's a very American thing, though, you know, and I feel like if they don't, then they'll be left behind, potentially left behind in you know, technological progress, and America's never really been like that. So, you know, maybe other countries are.
If you compare SEC, CFTC regulation of the exchanges in the U.S. versus the lack of regulation in Singapore, Hong Kong, Greater China, there were many exchanges in China that started out, but China kicked them out, so they went to all the other countries outside of China. And because they're unregulated, they've been a lot more innovative and have a lot more products. For example, there are exchanges like Binance, OKX, or BEEF, FTX, that have spot, futures, perpetuals, options. And if you look in the United States, there are no spot exchanges that have any derivatives, and you have a derivative exchange that only has Bitcoin and Ether, compared to the Asian exchanges, which have 20 coins with derivatives. So the lack of regulation in Asia has greatly helped
100%.
those exchanges.
Yeah.
You agree?
We agree on something. You know, it's funny as well because as a project founder, I can tell you that most of the time we try not to sell to Americans. You know?
Yeah, no, exactly. We have a Cayman fund because we also have a US fund, but it's the Cayman fund that faces blockchain companies and changes because most of the counterparties that we invest in or work with don't take US investors. So we have to create a Cayman fund to face those companies.
Yeah.
And it's, as an American, it's disheartening and disappointing that companies are going outside of the US because they're afraid of the US regulation.
Yeah.
I'm glad you guys agree. Any questions from the audience?
Yeah.
What's up, Nick Sullivan? This is my co-founder of Good Money.
So Nick Sullivan with Horizen. We've well established that the broader market makes a bigger difference for us than the individual investments that we're going to pick, i.e. we can all easily make money in this environment in 2017, but we all are likely to lose money in a 2018 money market. And there's a dominant thesis that it's a highly cyclical industry, and we're peaking right now, so we're all kind of hunkered down waiting for the inevitable winter.
I don't agree with you.
So I'm challenging it for you. Whenever I see a dominant theory, I look for trying to take the other side. And it seems to me a couple of things major have changed that lead it to me that there's not necessarily an inevitable bear market or a winter coming. One, a massive amount of institutional capital that's flowing into this buoys the industry, where before, when there was a big crash, retail investors couldn't buy the dip because they were already empty. But now institutions are eager to jump in when there's a sale, and so we've seen a couple of pullbacks, but then we recover within a few weeks. And then this time, what also feels different from 2013 and 2017 is it feels like there's more real-world use cases through NFTs and art and social media. So I'm curious if we are actually going into a bear winter and what your guys' thoughts are about that.
So
I think it's a great point.
Yeah, no, so Bitcoin obviously since early days, last 10 years, gone up 10,000 times, right, or whatever the number is. But during that same time period, it's also had drops of 90% 3 times. It's had drops of 50% a dozen times. So it's inherently, maybe cyclical isn't the right word, but maybe volatility is the more important word. And that it's going to keep going up and down violently, I believe, until there's some maturation point. And as an investor, I think that it's important to keep the long term. You know, yes, we want it to go 10x, or we believe it's going to go 10x. But what happens if it goes down 90%? Are you protected, and do you care?
The other thing I would say is, in 2017, so much money flooded into crypto. It was smart money, it was dumb money, it was so much money, and that created, and so many of these companies, some which shouldn't have been funded, were funded, right? And it created this kind of technological wave, and then I can understand 2018, 19, 20, because the good companies were building. I was talking to Devin Fitzer, a good friend of mine from OpenSea, and he's like, truth is, I just stuck with it during that time, and now we've got OpenSea, and a lot of companies did that. They went through that, lots of money and lots of innovation dip, and they're coming out of it, and that actual innovation, the value created, and the additional money coming into that at that point in time is helping it as well in terms of the market, because there's just more interesting things happening now that, as you say, are bringing to.
So you're saying that there was less smart money or dumb money going in 17. How do you know that 2021 money is more?
I said both smart money and dumb money.
Okay. Well, I think that there's a lot of dumb money that came in 2021, because when you see somebody go from 10 to 60, fear of missing out, a lot of the dumb money comes in. Well, what's dumb money? Money's money.
Can I ask one more question? Does anybody on the panel have any idea of how many ICOs are being investigated by the SEC? Do you guys have any idea?
A lot.
Like specifically?
Yeah, I don't know the number, but I know the SEC's got 100 people in their enforcement division.
I do. It's 900. It's only 900 companies that are being investigated by the ICOs. And most people in this audience doesn't know that. And when that comes to light, you want to talk about a team? The team in the United States was investing in everything. That team is going to take that money out. So I totally agree that there was dumb money then, and there's dumb money now. I totally agree with the entire panel, but it's shocking when you hear that there's almost 1,000 ICOs in the United States that are currently being investigated by the SEC. That will change sentiment.
There are tons of things that can change sentiment. This whole tether fund thing, tether fund, but lots of potential, but I have actually seen, I can't remember what it was. I remember I was sitting with Michael Ovid from AirSwap, and he's like, oh, the market's fucked, something happened, blah, blah, and it did indeed drop 20%, right, like it did, but I don't see unless we find out that quantum computing has, it's been able to reverse hash function or something like that, I don't know, and maybe the quantum proof stuff will, I'm millions about that, my co-founder is coming up after this and talking about it, but basically, I think that the market is robust against a lot of things. I agree that those things you're talking about create waves, but man, since 2011 I've been watching this thing. I had money in GOX, that's where it was, and GOX sent it back 4 years, 5 years, right? And I still don't have my money, but it survived.
And it's a long game. I know that we survived that winter at Horizen Labs, and so felt it, but did hunker down and get our technology going by launch last week. Thank you very much, and thank you guys also for the questions and just for being here in the morning, and obviously to the Coin Agenda team.